But welcome to Enterprise GIS, focusing on value in a world of noise. Please read it, and there'll be a pop quiz later. I had to show that one. I forgot that I was going to be introduced, so I had my own little slide. We can definitely skip that one. But I am not based in this lovely facility here. I'm down in Fort Worth, Texas, our corporate headquarters, and as a GIS person, I'm in the IT side of things. So here, like in the center of the slide, I'm responsible for database administration, development, GIS architecture, spatial data loading transformations, custom web development. We have a very small team. My partner in crime, Michael, over here, it's the two of us that keep the plumbing of Enterprise GIS going at Range Resources. So just a brief agenda, what I want to talk about today, about the title, value in a world of noise. Why focus on value, and what noise am I talking about? So I will, if you indulge me, run through a brief history of desktop GIS as I see it, talk a little bit about opportunities and the problem with opportunities, and how to define value, one way to define value. We'll touch on GIS process improvements and examples for that. And I've dubbed some of these data enrichment, automation, self-service GIS, web GIS tools, and a category I've called derivative data. And then we'll wrap up with sort of lessons learned and questions, and future efforts, what we might be looking at down the road. So why focus on value? Well, because as a team, as an organization, we want to do GIS work that really moves the needle. It has an impact, right? And we, as I said, we have a very lean team to do the work. We got to pick and choose what we do. So I need some kind of metric that allows me to say, hey, what's an impactful initiative or project? What do I prioritize? What do I shelve? And what do I just say no to? Say no, we're not, this is not where we want to spend our time and efforts. So what noise? Well, noise is the world of tech these days outside my organization, right? Noise is a challenge, and noise can be a huge distraction. So to illustrate that kind of noise, I'm going to run through, I was going to call it the history of GIS in under 60 seconds, but I'm not going to be able to do it in 60 seconds. So brief history of desktop GIS as I have seen it evolve over the years, right? In the beginning, the GIS practitioner, GIS analyst, GIS tech, whatever, used a lot of file-based data, right? And then we sent it to a printer, and we had a paper map, and we hung it on the wall, right? We're still doing that, of course, but that's how we all began. Not so long ago, all those file-based data sets moved into relational databases, and we published services, and then we were looking at maps on a computer screen, and we were still printing them, of course, too, as we are today. But, things evolved. So very recently, right, the GIS practitioner starts integrating data from various sources. And, some of those icons are just sort of, what I chose. You can put any number of icons in there. I mean, now it's various data sets, cloud, external, imagery from sources, unstructured data. Then we develop and deploy products, in the cloud, in the web-based, and those are shared and consumed in mobile platforms. We're still sitting at our screens and looking at maps, but we're pumping data into dashboards, and so the variety of sources and clients that consume our product just get more diverse, and it gets more complicated. So here now, the GIS practitioner is just struggling to keep up with all the technological opportunities out there, right? It's a new buzzword every 2 weeks. And if you look at the individual buzzwords that I picked, you can replace those with something else. They're not all things out of the last 24 months, but there's something new all the time. And if you look at the poor GIS practitioner, he or she, I think I have a she in this case, is just sometimes banging the head against the wall. So I'm not saying any of those buzzwords are bad. They all have their good use cases, and I'm not going to pretend I'm not doing some of those things as well. But there's a problem with opportunity, right? For each new technology, you'll find a vendor, a consultant. They'll tell you it's the thing you got to do. You must try it, or you're sort of doing your company a disservice. But in trying out new tech can be fun, right? It's like toys. It's like a new Lego kit. Let's play with it. I heard somebody mention that. I have a lot of time to play with stuff. We enjoy that. I get it. The reality, most projects, to spin some of this stuff up, take significant time, resources. There's change management. There's training. There's testing, budget. It's a big undertaking. And the idea that, hey, build it and they will come, right? Just show it to your executives and they're going to want to do this. That doesn't always work. You know, there's no money back in that one after building. And I've worked for some big companies and I've done some big projects that ended up not getting used. So, I forgot about my little arrow here. So what's the alternative? I want to talk about the alternative as I see it. Not an all-out this or that, but an alternative is to talk to your users and try to focus on value. So how do we define value? Well, in a high-paying industry like oil gas that I am in, time is money, right? If I can save my users time, I'm making money. I'm not saying that's the only way to define value, but that's something that we have taken as a sort of measure or a goalpost. And one metric is, how many mouse clicks does it take my user to get what they need? So, if I had to have some kind of scientific-looking graphic here. So if you want to click mouse clicks or graph mouse clicks against the frequency of how often do you do something, right? Then what I'm interested in is up there, something that people do a lot that takes a lot of clicks, something that's repetitive. And the question is, can we save you time right there, right? That's sort of my sweet spot of, I'm not going to be in the green zone down there. So examples of process improvement that kind of address this. There's 4 approaches here that I'll talk about that have worked for us, that have saved our GIS community time, that often require minimal, if any, investment and really just use what we already got in place. One is what I've called data enrichment and low-tech, underline low-tech here, low-tech integration. One is automation, alerts and notifications. One is self-service web GIS tools. And one is derivative GIS data. And for each of these, I'll be elaborating here in the next few slides. So we have a main corporate web map that I call the Christmas tree of web maps that has everything in it, right? And we have 100+ unique users in there during any week. And they go there for GIS information or GIS answers, but a lot of non-GIS information as well, because if they know where something is, they can find it, and that becomes their kind of launch pad for non-geospatial information. So that's a logical place for us to start sharing more available data. We have a lot of data sitting around in other systems, and it's kind of a low-tech approach to just, hey, if you're looking for this and you're going there already, we'll serve it up there. I always forget about my little highlights here. I apologize. So if we have a web map here that talks to various other systems, and it doesn't have to be like real-time integration or anything. That could be just like ETL that runs on some schedule. And we have a location, on our map, be it in our business at least, a well, a site, you name it, anything. We have information related to that location all over the place, and sometimes it's just easy to save people the trip to that other system and have GIS open on one screen and that system over here by going back to what we've been doing forever. Just say, yeah, we'll give you that attribute too, and build these kind of composite attribute tables, right? Instead of saying having somebody search for something, find it, and read off a key, a unique identifier, a name, and then plug it into the system on the other screen, we say, hey, we can save you that trip. It's low tech. It's been around forever. It's a no-brainer. But sometimes people go like, oh yeah, well that was easy. That's all I needed, right? So examples would be adding attributes, fields of interest to existing web map layers, right? Linking features on the map to documents, non-structured, like documents in management, the document management systems, like a SharePoint. So, hey, I need the so-and-so document that relates to this lease on the ground. Yeah, well, we'll save you that trip to search over there. It's the links right there. And finally, something that we have all been doing ever since we did web maps, started doing web maps, right? Symbolizing and showing data on the map in different ways. I mean, this could be, sorry, that was too quick. That could mean, hey, I'll show a lease by expiration date in one layer, and over here I show a lease by formation, or I show a well by when it will be drilled year, or a well by status, and rather than have people do that themselves, filter or choose a different symbology, hey, it's right there. So saving people mouse clicks. So that's kind of the easiest way to tackle some of that. My next category is automation, alerts and notifications, which to me is a perfect case for automation. Here is if I have Peter, Paul, and Mary in the company saying, hey, Peter says whenever a new record appears on the map, I need to know. So looking for sort of events happening, right? Paul says, I only care about what's happening in my little area of interest, and so I always go back there, see what's going on there. And Mary says, I always look for the same thing every Monday morning, or every first of the month, or once a quarter. So there's this kind of repetitive nature that these three share in their roles or routines. So same map location each time, every new record on the map, activity in one specific map area. Those are just examples. You could come up with other similar ones. Yes, those queries could be answered by somebody going out there and build their own map or run their own queries and set their own filters. But if they're always doing the same thing, right? Can I make it easier for them and save them those clicks? Most folks have day jobs, right? They don't necessarily want to double as citizen GIS analysts. They just need a quick answer for a question, especially if it's the same question over and over again. So trying to save everybody those repetitive steps. So what could save time here, and I say could because this, out of the examples I'm giving, that's the one where I'm trying to do even more. You talking to users and saying, can we do more of this? This is the one area where we haven't done as much as I hoped. So daily, weekly, monthly, just emails with, hey, here's your area of interest. This is what's going on, right? Here's the latest report that you wanted, and just have that on their desk, or not on their desk, but in their inbox, or ready for them to consume, to do what they were going to do if they were looking for that information on the map themselves. So somebody might say, hey, GIS, citizen GIS analyst, there's nothing wrong with it, but we don't have to expect everybody to do that. So self-service web GIS tools. Self-service could mean a lot of things, right? Self-service could mean, hey, find the data you need when you need it. It could mean build the map you want when you need it, or it could be like find someone else's map you may or may not need, right? It's this concept of we all build our own stuff, we throw it out there, and then you go on a fishing expedition to find something useful. Or it could mean, hey, each time we apply for a new permit, we need to file a specific map with a regulatory agency. Let me just mark the location and push print, right? Make it that simple. It could mean, hey, each time we're planning a new site, we need to generate a map package documenting subsurface coal in here in this part of the world. So let me just find that site, click print, and boom, I get my map. Make it that simple. Each time there's a specific event, we want to be able to contact interested parties within a certain distance and send a report. So again, find a location, maybe choose an event and push print. Start thinking of map making as that vending machine, right? You put in your quarter, you say, boom, this is what I want, and there's your map. We're not there yet, but that's kind of the goal. So what does that look like in the real world, right? There's our browser, our web application, a URL folks are familiar with. A user runs a search, selects a site, maybe there's some sort of validation afterwards. Is this really the right site? And are we sure we have all the parameters you needed to make the map you want? When that is the case, you just hit submit. You just hit, hey, print. And we're sending some information from the front end to some geoprocessing service in the back. And yes, we're an Esri shop, so when I say geoprocessing, that's an Esri geoprocessing service. And then all that business logic in terms of what does that map have to look like, how many pages. In this case, we may have a page more. In this case, we may have we're in one state or in one county, there needs to be something else. All that business logic specific to that location is all hard-coded on the back, and the user knows, hey, when I click this button, I know what I'm getting, and that service sends back a PDF map of what they want. That's not a one page, that could be many, many pages. It could be, depending on site, a very, very different type of map. So this pattern, if you will, right, we have found really successful, where people are, there's a lot of confidence in this working now. People know, hey, when I need a map, I go here and I select my site and boom, there it is. It's really catching on. We have built several of those. We have some in the works. That's sort of when I go talk to users, that's always one of my use cases. Hey, can we help you with something like that? So that's been, and it really translates very well from user A's requirements to user B requirements. There's a lot of recycling that we can do when we build these from the front end all the way to the back end. So if I wanted to kind of look at, pro, con, or advantages, disadvantages of this type of tool, user acceptance is very good. Folks like this. It's like, man, I don't have to do this myself. I don't need to call somebody in the GIS department who then has to look for the template they used last year and update fields. It's all automated, right? And it offers high level of customizability on the front end. I can make that look whatever. It can be like a workflow with multiple steps that you click through, or it could be as simple as pick something and push play. And same on the back end, right? There's a lot of complexity that you can hard code on the back end. And if you've worked with Esri geoprocessing service, that's usually writing Python code. A lot of logging I can have on the back end. When something doesn't work, why does it work? Well, we're missing a certain data element. You could have notifications, all kinds of stuff happening there. And when I think of con or disadvantages, the only thing I could think of is that sometimes folks get used to, this is so simple, that any enhancement request they come up with, they assume has to be simple. And sometimes I have to say, yeah, we can do it, but it's not simple, right? Some things are, it looks easy, but some things are not that simple to implement, but we do try to give them what they need. And finally, my category that I dubbed derivative GIS data, and maybe that is not the best term for it, but that's what I came up with. What do I mean by derivative data? So our web map allows access to a large array of a collection of GIS data sets. Back to what I called the Christmas tree, we have everything in our web map. Sometimes that's not a good thing. It also has the tools in there where people can measure and they run buffer queries and then they set filters and queries. So you can do a lot as a user in our web map. So when somebody does a bunch of memory measurements or queries and exports what was in the buffer into a spreadsheet, and they're sort of collecting data in the map using those tools, that's what for the purposes of this presentation here, I'm calling derivative data, right? So that could then be used as feedstock for a report. Sometimes people would collect that data to feed it into another application, a bunch of measurements or something. And these days, it sort of also applies to, what we're doing with machine learning, where people were trying to enrich some machine learning data set with spatial information, but they were literally doing it by manual clicks in the web map, right? Or maybe another, or even a desktop GIS tool. So those are just examples. Oh yeah, I just said that. Web map users were doing that manually, and sometimes that took a lot of time, and sometimes it was just time prohibitive. It was like, no, we can't do this for thousands of wells. So a few examples for that. When you're looking at wells, right? You have existing wells, and you're interested in well spacing and lateral offsets between wells. So a lot of measurements happen there, and it looks like, in this case, oh well, that wouldn't be so bad. But if you're doing a lot of measurements across a large area and things change, future wells get moved around and it changes, that becomes kind of unsustainable as a manual task. Another example is, pipeline easements. I'm not an expert on pipeline requirements. Mark over here can speak to all the regulatory detail of that. But when you're trying to analyze what's happening in a pipeline easement from year to year and building structures, what's occupied, what's not to meet regulatory requirement, right? There is, and then there's certain radius or offsets that you have to consider. Automating that type of thing, where you're looking at a pipeline and you're advancing sort of a buffer along that pipeline, and each time you for each buffer you run a certain process. That's very labor intensive if you had to do that manually. So that was something where we were able to help. I say, hey, we can build some tools for that. We can run some automation process. And finally, if you're in the oil gas world and you're drilling and you're fracking, right? Frac hit analysis, where you're fracking a new well in an area where there's already a bunch of wells, and if you're not familiar with the term frac hit, you're fracking a well and you're concerned with, how that impacts production at an already producing well. So that may look kind of similar to the first slide, because yes, you're interested how far are they apart. You're also interested, if a well out here has a bunch of wells between the fracking well and the one that you're worried about. It's not just horizontal. You're working in 3D. You're looking back in time. You're trying to train a machine learning model to predict this stuff. So you need to say, hey, what was going on 10 years ago? This is the map view today. Some of those wells weren't even there, or if they were there 10 years ago, were they producing at the time? So you're working in time and space at that point. And again, to do that manually, people were starting to do that sort of thing. We just said, that's crazy, right? We can automate that for you. And again, on this slide, it looks harmless, but when you go to a bigger area where you have a bunch of wells and pads, and then you go out to whatever may be a county, or you want to do it for all your wells, it just becomes, impossible. So those are ways where we've been able to say, hey, tell me what it is you're doing, or I see what you're doing. Let me make that easier for you guys. And with that, I'm already to my lessons learned here. Lessons learned is I am most of the time, able to tune out the noise. That doesn't mean, back to the noise slide, that I ignore what's going out in the world, but if there's not really sort of a use case for it, I'm just going to say, hey, I'll keep an eye on that, but I don't need to spin up a bunch of POCs and pilot projects just to say, hey, I'm playing with shiny new toys. And our users, as far as mouse clicks are concerned, are sort of catching on, where I used to have to go and seek out those opportunities, say, is there anything I can help you with? Anything where you wish you didn't have to do X, Y, Z, all these steps all the time? now we have people starting to reach out, say, hey, there's this thing I always have to do. Do you think? And I'm also, yeah, that's a great opportunity. We'd love to help you with that. So that mouse click measure, that's something that people can relate to, right? And not just because they may have a carpal tunnel issue, but it's time consuming. So future efforts, like I said, I'm not at all opposed to some of those tools, some of that new tech out there. I won't say that I, have my moments when I want to play with things. I'm doing a little POC. How can I use ChatGPT to automate things, right? We're doing those things too. And I hope to automate, and if we've heard a few, you saw my buzzword slide, we talked a little bit about AI. I don't know what this presentation would look like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now. I don't know if I'll have a job 2, 3, 5 years from now. I may have, replaced myself with ChatGPT automation. But until then, thank you. And, if you have any questions, happy to take them.